Welcome to the DC Bar Community's Law Student Podcast with your hosts,
Sienna Hurd, 2L at American University, Washington College of Law.
Kirsten Wolford, 3L at the George Washington University Law School.
Renata Mitchell, 3L at the George Washington University Law School.
Elena Hoffman, 2L at the George Washington University Law School.
And you're listening to Let's Brief It. Hello, and welcome to Let's Brief It. We're your hosts, Sienna Hurd and Kirsten Wolford. You've probably heard of TikTok, a popular app where people can show off their dance skills, among many other things, in short videos. But are there serious security concerns associated with the Chinese app?
Today, we're joined by Nakia Gray. Nakia is an attorney and business consultant committed to helping others with branding, marketing, and entrepreneurship. As CEO and founder of Nakia Gray Legal PC, a virtual law firm, Nakia enjoys helping creative entrepreneurs and artists establish a brand and build a profitable business by protecting and leveraging their creative work. Her areas of practice include business law, copyright and trademarks, e-commerce and internet law, entertainment law, and estate planning. Nakia, would you mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So first, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be joining you and doing this. There was a time very long ago when I was a DC law student. I graduated from Howard University School of Law in 2006. And I also went to American University, not for law school, but I have a master's from American. So that American's near and dear to my heart as well. I am born and raised in the DC area. I went to the University of Maryland Eastern Shore for undergrad, and I have a marketing degree there. So I've always kind of been in this, exciting marketing online space, online a little later. There was no online when I was in college. That's how old I am. But I have my own law firm, and it's an exciting time. I mean, I'm a virtual law firm, which means that I work primarily from wherever, the beach or Starbucks, or my office is based in DC, but I'm able to work with clients from wherever they're located as long as I have my laptop and a good internet connection. So I am often speaking for the DC Bar on technology and helping other lawyers to catch up and cash in on practicing law in the digital age. It's one of my favorite things to do. And so thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Thank you, Nakia. Now, for those of you who might be unfamiliar with the app, TikTok is incredibly popular among young teens, but it also has an increasingly wide range of users. The app is known for its fun and silly dance challenges, but it's also given rise to some security concerns, leading to President Trump threatening to ban it nationwide, while the Department of Homeland Security, Transportation Security Administration, and the United States Armed Forces have already banned the use of TikTok on federal government phones. Some of our listeners may remember when President Trump threatened a nationwide ban on TikTok. His executive order has been blocked so far by federal judges in DC and Pennsylvania. Nakia, does this indicate that the security concerns themselves are not viable, or did the courts rule that the exercise of executive power itself was improper?
So in DC, Judge Nichols stated that the exercise of his executive order itself was improper, right? And the reason is because you can't just issue just a broad sweeping order the way that the president did. In his order, he did talk about that TikTok posed a national security risk because the information that TikTok collects can potentially help adversaries collect information about federal employees, and that can be harmful. Which is, I'm not going to say that there's not some truth to that there are lots of concerns that people have when it comes to TikTok and the information that they collect. The problem, though, was that President Trump really relied on the IEEPA, which stands for International Emergency Economic Powers Act, as giving him the authority to issue such an order. And Judge Nichols from the DC Federal Circuit said, no, that's not it. That's not enough. And the court really sided with TikTok and stated that the IEEPA contains a broad grant of authority to declare national emergencies and to prohibit certain transactions with foreign countries or nationals that pose threats to national security of the U.S. However, it doesn't give the president just a broad power to just shut down anything, which does not involve a transfer of anything of value. And so because so much of the content on TikTok is not necessarily of value, the court found that no, you can't do it.
That's definitely enlightening, especially considering the security concerns. We know that data is power, but in your opinion, why is consumer data so important, and how can potential nefarious actors use this data to threaten national security?
Well, from a business perspective, and me being a business owner, it's important, and it's our little way of finding out how can we get our products and our services in front of the right people so that they can buy it, right? That's really valuable in consumer behavior. This isn't new, it's just more accessible because we have the internet and the ability to do it. There are concerns, and it's debatable as to how significant the concern should be when it comes to that. I mean, we don't really have any examples yet, or there's no precedent to show us that this actually does lead to a threat of national security. We know that the possibility is there, and that's kind of the struggle that the court is having, is that we're this is all so hypothetical, that's to say, well, it can be this or this could happen, but it hasn't actually happened. And so, having that information has made the Amazons of the world very wealthy and successful companies because they're able to tap into what our behaviors are.
And moving a little bit away from national security risks and more to individual risks, what risk might TikTok pose to its users specifically?
So TikTok, unlike its social media platform cousins, Facebook and Instagram, is really quite intrusive in terms of the data that they're collecting. I mean, all of these apps collect quite a bit of data, but TikTok has definitely been called out for being a little bit more intrusive. They're collecting data without their users' explicit knowledge. Anything from keystroke patterns and relationship statuses are collected. Also, there's some concern about them accessing the microphone and the camera. And there have also been lawsuits that deal with the biometric data from users. And so that's where it gets really like, okay, wait a minute. That's just a little bit beyond just, whether I am, shopping at Target or something like that. I mean, that is very intrusive when we're talking about facial geometry, iris scans, voice recognition, fingerprints. I mean, they're using the facial recognition software for the filters. However, if used improperly, right, there is an intelligence risk there. And so I do think that there is no direct evidence right now. And I think that we have to be honest about that and quite candid that there's no evidence that we have that, they're collecting this and giving it to the Chinese government to plot and plan and scheme to attack the US. However, it is a valid concern because there's an opportunity there, right? And we don't really know.
As a TikTok user, I can say that the algorithm can be scarily on point. So that definitely makes sense. So in regards to security concerns, what specific laws does this initial claim invoke? In particular, what are the key laws governing cybersecurity in the United States?
So first, there's the Federal Trade Commission Act, which really gets right to the point and says that organizations must engage in all reasonable and necessary security practices. We all know what that means, that there's lots of room of interpretation as to what's reasonable and what is necessary. And then prominently, I'm certain everyone is aware of COPPA, which is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which comes up a lot. COPPA applies to websites and online services that are directed at children under the age of 13. Also applies if the operator of the site has actual knowledge that children under the age of 18 are using a website. And the purpose is really to regulate how those websites collect, use, and disclose personal information from and about children.
And now going back to the Trump administration's efforts to block TikTok in the US, TikTok's data is stored on US servers in the United States. So how does that impact the Trump administration's claims that China is using consumer data?
Well, I think the Trump administration's concern is that although the data is stored in the US and in Singapore, the parent company servers are in China. And while the app itself contains references also to China-based infrastructure, so it's unlikely, I think, that Chinese officials would have access to the data that's stored in the US, and all the stored data within China could be shared with the Chinese government for intelligence purposes. Because of this, the Trump administration believes that the data of the American people is being collected and shared with the Chinese government. Now, again, this is hypothetical. I mean, we don't have any proof of this. And so that though that is a valid concern, but I think until I hate to say it, something happens or we see some type of breach, I don't think that this is going to go any further. I think that it's going to be, it's there, but there's no real proof that there's been any breach of intelligence at this point.
Going back to sort of the procedural elements of bringing a case, you've mentioned several times that a lot of this is hypothetical, and so we don't necessarily have the injury element next. But in the Pennsylvania case in particular, the case was actually brought by TikTok influencers, not TikTok itself. So, what can you comment on in regards to standing of those individuals?
Don't you just love standing? It takes us back to first year in law school and in con law. So to bring a suit in federal court, we all know that it is required that the plaintiff show that they have standing. They have to show that they have actually suffered an injury that is connected to the government's action and that is likely that the injury will be redressed by a favorable decision. The court found that the influencers did have standing. And that was because they would not be able to install the TikTok updates and they wouldn't be able to communicate and share their videos with others who don't already have the app, which is how they earn a living. So there's no, the standing argument is not a strong one here. Just because they're not the owners of the app, they utilize it. And for many influencers, I don't know if you follow any of them or if you've ever seen where they release their income reports, they're making some pretty good money here, okay? I mean, I could pay off all my student loans just from some of the money that these influencers are making. So there's definitely that. The issue, though, where they ran into the issue was not in the standing, it was the injury. They weren't able to show it. Why? Because it's hypothetical. It hasn't happened yet. And so that was where they had the biggest hiccup, but it was not on the standing issue.
Now, what advice do you have for listeners on how to safeguard consumer data in social media interactions like on TikTok?
So the first thing is every single application has terms and conditions. And so I tell my clients all the time, become intimately familiar with the terms and the conditions of each platform. They change. And so a lot of people, my kids included, I've got two kids that love TikTok. They don't even think about terms and conditions or what information is being collected. And so I think that part of it is just going to be having that conversation and parents monitoring, platforms that their kids are on. A lot of times something might pop up and it'll say, allow access to your camera and your microphone, and we're hitting yes. We don't really understand what that means, right? And so that's the first thing, is just really making sure that you understand and you familiarize yourself with each social media site's functionality before you broadcast and share any messages, so that you understand who will have access to your information and what you can post online.
That's definitely good advice, and I think some advice that all of us need to hear as we engage more in social media. Turning away from cybersecurity for a moment, your work is particularly fascinating, I would imagine, for TikTok users who are producing viral content. Some of these people that are, like you said, making a ton of money off of this. For those types of users, and particularly young users, what advice do you have for those wishing to protect their creative content?
So going viral is aspirational and it's what many influencers are hoping for. But the truth is, it's such an unpredictable random occurrence and phenomenon that you really can't fully prepare for it, right? It's so random and it does happen. And so a lot of times what I am advising my clients that are influencers is to make sure that you are watermarking your videos, having something on your content so that when it does go viral, it's known that you are the source or the creator of the content. That's one of the things that you can do. For video, video has the ability to be copyrighted. And so you may want to copyright your content and then make sure that how it's being shared, that you take advantage of those opportunities to license it and do licensing agreements and do all kinds of things. And that's what influencers are in the business of doing. But a lot of times it's not the influencers that go viral. It's the, local high schooler who wasn't even trying to go viral, just put out some content and they did not have those things in place. But that's really what I would say is just, making sure that there is a way that you can track and trace and see where your content is landing and decide how you can quickly, this is always something that happens really fast, because as fast as it goes viral, And at the same time, it can be like, we're on to the next thing. So really being positioned to take advantage of those, it's not even 15 minutes of fame anymore. It's more like 15 seconds. Making sure that you are positioned to optimize that and to monetize it in a way that can, catapult you into the influencer space is really key.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. And we're also wondering, from your perspective, what types of consumer data do you find most useful in marketing for your clients? So that could be either general demographics or maybe more minute consumer behaviors.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely demographics, age, spending power is huge, right? I mean, knowing whether people are renters or whether they are homeowners. Do they have kids or do they not have kids? I mean, all of that is very valuable information. Are they purchasers of online products? There are some people that are not. So how much do they spend online? If anybody's tracking me, I'm like an online business's dream because I am always, hitting ads, buying this, buying that. I'm an online person. And so certainly I'm sure my content and my data is all over the place, which is why they keep advertising to me. So those kinds of things are very useful for a business owner to know. And even an organization, not necessarily that it's in business. I mean, I can think of times where I may just be talking about, American or I'm thinking about going to school. And the next thing I know, I've got a tons of ads from, all of these different schools. So all of that kind of information is definitely very useful consumer data.
Thank you for providing more of a definition for that. I feel like that's a term that's often just thrown around and, we don't always think about in the marketing context what that means exactly. And just kind of along the lines of cybersecurity law in general, and mainly what you do, what advice do you have for law students looking to enter this area of law or even to start a business similar to yours?
So if there is any way that you can take a cybersecurity course, I did not do that when I was in law school. I don't even remember if it was a thing back then. It's definitely a completely different landscape. But if there are any courses that you can take now, I would say to do those. And also, one of the things that I did in law school, and I don't think enough people take advantage of this, is even though you're not a practicing lawyer yet, join the Bar Association, join those other professional organizations that have the lawyers that are doing the type of law that you're interested in. Most of them have a very nominal or maybe even free membership for law students. Go to some of those CLEs, even though some of it may appear to be a little over your head. That's where you can kind of really engulf yourself in those practices and continue doing things like this. I mean, I think having the conversation, that's the great part of it, is that you have the ability to create your own platforms right now and have these discussions. And I think that, all of that will help you to really to get into that space. And as far as having if your desire is to be in solo practice or to have your own firm, again, you can't go wrong with, surrounding yourself with people who are doing that. Take internships and take advantage of all of these opportunities, especially now. I've been virtual for a long time, but finally the world is catching up to me and lawyers understand that, hey, we can actually work without having people come into an office. And so that opens up some amazing doors for law students, right? When I was in law school, I knew that I wanted to be in entertainment law, but I was not flexible about moving. DC is where I'm from. It's my home. I'm not going anywhere. And so a lot of the entertainment opportunities were in LA or they were in New York, and that just wasn't going to work for me. But if I were in law school now, I mean, how cool is it that you could be at American or at GW and you could be working for a firm that is based in LA, or you could be working for, an entertainment company or cybersecurity or a fashion house that's in New York and intern and do it virtually. So take advantage of those opportunities and really go. I'm a non-traditionalist and I'm all about breaking the rules and doing what, I do everything opposite of what they tell you to do. So be open to that and don't worry about, trying to fit in a certain mold. Be a disruptor and just reach out to someone and say, hey, I don't see any internships on your website, but I think I'd be a great intern for you because here's what I could do. And you never know how that, could turn into something that you would really enjoy and not necessarily going through the Office of Career Services at your law school.
Well, Nakia, we'd like to thank you for your time. We know that the clock is tick-tocking and you've got places to be. So that concludes this episode. So thank you for everyone for tuning in to Let's Brief It.
Thank you so much for having me.
The DC Bar law student community strives to engage and support law students before you graduate and expose you to the tangible benefits of joining the DC Bar and DC Bar communities. Curated programming allows law students to participate in substantive content programming, leadership trainings, networking with practicing attorneys in fields of interest, writing opportunities, and other activities designed to expand your legal education beyond the classroom. Make an investment in your legal career by joining the law student community. To learn more, visit us at www.dcbar.org or email communities@dcbar.org. We look forward to hearing from you.